The afternoon sun cast a warm, golden glow through the half-drawn blinds of the bedroom, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced across the cream-colored walls. It had been 3 months since Eliza and James had started dating, 3 months of getting to know each other, of sharing coffee in quiet cafes, of long walks in the park, and of stolen kisses that left them both wanting more. Today felt different, though. There was a charge in the air, an unspoken understanding that they were ready to take their relationship to the next level. Eliza sat perched on the edge of James's bed, her fingers tracing the pattern on his navy blue comforter. She was nervous, but not in a fearful way, more in the way that suggested she was standing on the precipice of something significant, something that would change the dynamic between them forever. Her chestnut hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and she tucked a strand behind her ear, a habit James had come to recognize as a sign of her nervousness. "Are you comfortable?" James asked, his voice low and gentle as he moved around the room, straightening things that didn't need straightening. He was stalling, and they both knew it. Not because he didn't want this, but because he wanted it to be perfect. "Yes," Eliza replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been thinking about this for a while now." She looked up at him, her hazel eyes reflecting the sunlight, making them appear almost golden. "About us." James paused his movement, his tall frame silhouetted against the window. He was handsome in a way that wasn't immediately obvious. Not the kind of handsome that slapped you in the face, but the kind that grew on you, that revealed itself in the crinkles around his eyes when he smiled or in the thoughtful way he listened when she spoke. He wore a simple white t-shirt that contrasted with his olive skin, and dark jeans that hugged his athletic build. "I've been thinking about us too," he admitted, moving towards the window. With deliberate slowness, he reached up and shut the bedroom blinds, dimming the room and creating a more intimate space. The action wasn't just practical, it was symbolic, a closing off from the outside world, a creation of a space that was just for them. Let me explain why this moment matters so much in their story. It's not just about the physical act of closing the blinds, but what it represents. In relationships, we often create these symbolic barriers between our intimate moments and the rest of the world. It's a way of saying, "This is ours. This is sacred." For Eliza and James, this simple action marked a transition point in their relationship, a moment when they decided to be vulnerable with each other in a way they hadn't before. James turned back to face Eliza, his expression a mixture of desire and tenderness. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. His touch was warm, reassuring, and Eliza felt her nervousness begin to dissolve, replaced by a different kind of tension, one filled with anticipation and want. "I want to try something," he said, his voice deeper now, a reflection of his own desire. "But I need to know you trust me." Eliza nodded, her breath catching slightly. "I do trust you," she said, and she meant it. Over the past 3 months, James had proven himself to be considerate, respectful, and attentive to her needs and boundaries. It was one of the things she loved most about him, his ability to make her feel safe even as he challenged her to step outside her comfort zone. James smiled, a slow, confident smile that made Eliza's heart race. He guided her hands to the headboard of the bed, placing them on the wooden slats. "Keep your hands where I put them," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Can you do that for me?" The command sent a shiver down Eliza's spine. It wasn't controlling or domineering. It was an invitation to play, to explore the dynamics of trust and surrender that they had been dancing around for weeks. She nodded, her fingers curling around the wooden slats of the headboard. This moment represents a pivotal point in their relationship, the exploration of power dynamics and the establishment of trust. In any healthy relationship, there's a give and take, a dance of control and surrender that requires absolute trust from both parties. James's request wasn't about domination. It was about creating a safe space for Eliza to let go, to be vulnerable, and to experience pleasure without the burden of control. "Tell me if anything feels uncomfortable," James added, his eyes searching hers for any sign of hesitation. "Your comfort is the most important thing to me." Eliza appreciated his concern, the way he checked in with her, making sure she was okay with each step they took together. It was another layer of trust being built between them, the knowledge that he would stop if she asked, that her boundaries would be respected. "I will," she promised, settling back against the pillows, her hands still gripping the headboard as instructed. There was something freeing about relinquishing control, about putting her trust in James and allowing herself to be guided by him. James sat back on his heels, taking a moment to just look at her. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice filled with awe. "Not just physically, but everything about you. The way you think, the way you laugh, the way you care about others. I've never met anyone like you, Eliza." His words warmed her from the inside out. In a world where physical attraction often took precedence, James saw all of her, her mind, her heart, her soul. It made the physical connection they were about to share all the more meaningful. James leaned forward, his lips finding hers in a kiss that started soft and tentative but quickly deepened into something more urgent, more needy. Eliza responded eagerly, her body arching towards his even as her hands remained where he had placed them. It was a delicious contradiction, the restraint of her hands against the freedom of her response to his kiss. As their kiss intensified, James's hands began to explore, tracing the curve of her waist, the softness of her stomach, the swell of her breasts through her thin cotton blouse. Each touch was deliberate, designed to build her anticipation, to make her yearn for more. And it was working. Eliza felt herself responding to his touch, her body becoming more sensitive, more alive under his hands. But even as the physical sensations threatened to overwhelm her, Eliza found herself thinking about the emotional significance of what they were doing. This wasn't just physical desire. It was a deepening of their connection, a new level of intimacy that transcended the purely physical. James seemed to sense her thoughts, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his thumb tracing the curve of her lower lip. "I'm thinking about how right this feels," Eliza admitted. "How right we feel together." James smiled, a smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners in the way that Eliza found so endearing. "I feel it too," he said. "Like we've been moving towards this moment since the day we met." And perhaps they had been. From their first meeting at a mutual friend's party, where they had spent hours in a corner talking about everything from their favorite books to their deepest fears, there had been a connection between them that went beyond the ordinary. A recognition, perhaps, of something kindred in each other's souls. James's hands moved to the buttons of her blouse, undoing them one by one with a slowness that was both tantalizing and maddening. Each newly exposed inch of skin was met with a kiss, a touch, a whispered word of appreciation. By the time her blouse was fully open, Eliza was breathing heavily, her body humming with desire. "Remember," James said, his voice a low rumble against her skin. "Keep your hands where I put them." Eliza nodded, tightening her grip on the headboard. It was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain her position as James continued his exploration of her body, his touches becoming more bold, more intimate. But there was something incredibly erotic about the restraint, about the way she had to surrender to the sensations without being able to reciprocate or guide. This dynamic between them, the play of power and submission, was new territory for both of them. In their daily lives, they were equals, partners who respected each other's independence and agency. But here, in the privacy of James's bedroom, they were exploring different aspects of their relationship, finding pleasure in the temporary surrender of control. It's important to understand that this kind of power play in a relationship isn't about one person having actual control over the other. It's a mutual agreement, a shared fantasy that both partners enter into willingly. The true power lies in the trust between them, the knowledge that boundaries will be respected, that either person can stop the game at any time. As James's exploration became more intimate, Eliza felt herself getting lost in the sensations, in the building pleasure that threatened to consume her. Her fingers ached from gripping the headboard, but she didn't want to let go, didn't want to break the spell that James had woven around them. "You're doing so well," James murmured against her skin, his voice filled with pride and desire. "So beautiful, so trusting." His words of affirmation added another layer to her pleasure, making her feel both seen and appreciated. This wasn't just about physical satisfaction. It was about emotional connection, about the vulnerability of allowing someone to see you at your most unguarded. But even in this moment of intense connection, a flicker of doubt crossed Eliza's mind. Was she giving too much of herself too soon? Was she setting herself up for heartbreak? These thoughts were natural, a protective mechanism born from past hurts and disappointments. James, attuned to her as he was, sensed the change in her demeanor. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately pulling back, his eyes searching hers with concern. Eliza hesitated, not wanting to break the mood, but also knowing that honesty was crucial for the trust they were building. I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of you, or of this, but of how much I feel for you. It's overwhelming sometimes." James nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I feel it too," he said, sitting back on his heels. "It's scary to care this much, to be this vulnerable with someone. But Eliza, I think that's what makes it real. The fact that it scares us means it matters." His words resonated with her, cutting through her fears and doubts. He was right. The intensity of their connection was frightening precisely because it was significant, because it had the potential to change them both in profound ways. "Can I move my hands now?" Eliza asked, needing to touch him, to feel him against her. James smiled, reaching up to gently release her fingers from their grip on the headboard. "Yes," he said, bringing her hands to his lips and kissing each finger, each knuckle, as if in gratitude for her trust, her willingness to play along with his fantasy. With her hands free, Eliza reached for him, pulling him close, needing the reassurance of his body against hers. Their kiss was different now, less about desire and more about connection, about the wordless communication of two people who were beginning to understand the depth of their feelings for each other. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and a little overwhelmed, James rested his forehead against hers. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he confessed, the words tumbling out as if he couldn't hold them back any longer. Eliza's heart soared at his admission. It was what she had been feeling too, but had been afraid to voice, afraid that it was too soon, too intense. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered back, the words feeling right, feeling true in a way that surprised her. Their confessions changed the atmosphere in the room, shifting it from one of physical exploration to emotional revelation. They spent the next hour talking, sharing stories from their past, hopes for their future, fears and dreams, and all the little things that make up a person's heart. And when they finally came together physically, it was with a new understanding, a deeper connection that made every touch, every kiss, every moment of pleasure more significant. Their bodies spoke the language that their words had begun, a conversation of trust and vulnerability and love. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the dimness of the bedroom, the blinds still drawn against the outside world, Eliza traced patterns on James's chest, marveling at the journey they had taken together in just a few short hours. "Thank you," she said softly. James looked down at her, a question in his eyes. "For what?" "For creating this space for us," she explained. "For asking me to trust you, and then proving that I could. For seeing all of me, not just the parts one show to everyone else." James pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "That's what love is supposed to be, I think," he said thoughtfully. "Creating a space where both people can be fully themselves, without fear or judgment." Eliza nodded against his chest, feeling a sense of peace and rightness that she had never experienced before. This was what she had been looking for, perhaps without even knowing it. Not just passion or desire, but this profound connection, this mutual recognition of souls. Outside, the world continued its chaotic dance, people rushing to appointments, cars honking in traffic, the endless cycle of human activity. But in this room, with the blinds drawn against the fading afternoon light, Eliza and James had created their own universe, a place where time moved differently and where the only thing that mattered was the growing love between them. As the evening drew in, casting the room in deeper shadows, they remained entwined, neither willing to break the spell by turning on a light or acknowledging the passage of time. There would be practical concerns eventually. Dinner to be made, calls to be returned, the inevitable return to the separate lives they led outside this room. But for now, they existed in this bubble of intimacy, this sacred space they had created together. "Will you stay the night?" James asked, his voice hopeful but not presumptuous. Even now, after everything they had shared, he was careful to respect her autonomy, her right to set her own boundaries. Eliza considered the question. Staying would be another step, another level of intimacy. But after what they had shared today, both physically and emotionally, it felt natural, right? "Yes," she said simply. "I'd like that." James smiled, the kind of smile that transformed his entire face, that made his eyes light up with joy. "I'll make us breakfast in the morning," he promised. "My pancakes are legendary." Eliza laughed, the sound bright and happy in the quiet room. "Legendary, huh? That's a bold claim." "You'll see," James said with mock seriousness. "They'll change your life." And perhaps they would, Eliza thought. Or perhaps her life had already been changed, not by pancakes, but by this man. By the way he had shown her that vulnerability could be strength, that surrender could be empowering, that love could be both safe and exhilarating. As night fell completely, wrapping the room in darkness, they remained together, talking softly, laughing, sharing the kind of intimate silence that only happens between two people who are truly comfortable with each other. And when sleep finally claimed them, they drifted off in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that what they had found together was rare and precious and worth protecting. In the morning, as promised, there were pancakes, fluffy, golden, and indeed quite impressive. But more importantly, there was the continuation of what they had begun the day before, a relationship built on trust, respect, and a deepening love that promised to withstand whatever challenges lay ahead. As they sat across from each other at James's small kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the windows they had opened to welcome the new day, Eliza realized that the closing of the blinds had been more than just a physical act. It had been an invitation to step into a new chapter of their lives, one where they would face the world not as separate individuals, but as partners, stronger together than they ever could be apart. And as for James's instruction to keep her hands where he put them, well, that had been the beginning of a beautiful lesson in trust, in the power of surrendering control to someone worthy of that gift. It was a lesson she looked forward to exploring further, in all the days and nights that stretched before them, full of promise and possibility. Total _char_count, 17,938.